Hello, welcome. If you're new, my name is Stephanie, and on this channel, I really like to talk about houseplants. Today, I'm talking about my March favorites. So these are the plants that I think did well in the month of March, or plants that I'm just very excited to talk about, and I tend to look at them a lot. I have been looking at them a lot during this month. So usually in my favorites videos, I like to have 4 categories just to make it easier. So the first category is usually the comeback. So the comeback is a plant that might have been struggling for a few months or a few weeks, but then in the month, it just started doing well, it started thriving, and it seems to finally be growing a bit better. And then I have the fastest grower. So that's the plant, maybe not the plant that's put out the most leaves, but the plant that has been pushing the most and doing really well for the month of March. Next, I have the show off or the showstopper. So maybe that's a plant that has beautiful variegated leaves or just beautiful foliage, just beautiful foliage. And lastly, I have the MVP, the most valuable plant. So the plant that I've been loving the most, my favorite plant, the one I just can't get enough of, or I haven't been getting enough of in the month of March. If you're excited, stay tuned and let's get into it. All right, let's talk about the comeback. So the comeback for this month is this Hoya Lacunosa Super Silver, or some may call it a Croniana Super Silver. So this plant was a surprise actually. In one of my shopping videos, I'm not quite sure which month it was. I'll make sure that I put it up on the screen. But in this shopping video, I was at Home Depot, and I found this plant. I was very surprised because at the time of filming this video, this plant is not one that you would find in local garden centers. And so I was very surprised to find it. I love it, especially because it looks very similar to Hoya mint coin. And sometimes I wonder if there are pieces of a mint coin in there. But anyways, let me go back. So when I got this plant, I was really excited. It looked very good when I initially got it. And I thought, wow, I can't believe I found this at Home Depot. But when I got home and I took a look at the roots, the plant was basically on its way out. It had a lot of root rot and it really wasn't doing well. It had a very big pot for a very small root system that was struggling. It seems like it experienced inconsistent watering. So because some leaves were very brown, as if it had been underwatered, but then the roots showed sign of root rot. So you can tell that it was thirsty for a long time and then it was watered, and so it immediately started to rot. So it's not surprising that maybe the nursery that originally had this plant maybe was trying to get rid of it quickly. I don't know, but I'm happy that I was able to get this plant in my collection. So when I got it, I definitely had to rehab the plant. It lost a lot of leaves, and I chopped it up and put it in sphagnum moss and started to propagate it. And this is not even all of it. This is maybe 70 to 80% of it. But anyways, it definitely took off. It started growing. It had some really nice healthy roots, and now it's pushing off some really nice new growth. It seemed to have acclimated to my environment, and it seems to be sort of getting its footing a bit, and I'm very excited that it's doing well. I was really, really worried for a second. I thought I was going to lose this plant, but it's doing a lot better. I'm excited to have like a long, lush version of this plant. I really look forward to it. But something else I would like to mention. So this plant is so interesting because some of the leaves are long, very minty, very silvery, but some of the leaves have more of an elongated shape. But then some of the leaves, like I was mentioning before I got ahead of myself, look very much so like a mint coin. And it has like rounder leaves, but I know it's not, I know it's not a mint coin. I think the leaves on a Lacunosa mint coin are a bit thicker. I mean, I do have one. It's just a small cutting that's growing out. But the mint coin, I find, tends to have thicker leaves and it's a bit more silver. This is more of like a greenish silver. The mint coin is a bit more silvery than green. And so, yeah, as much as I would love for this to be a mint coin, I know it's not. But I love this plant, and I've heard that this is a frequent bloomer. So I look forward to it eventually blooming for me. So where does this live? This lives in my south facing window in my bedroom. I was able to get like a ceiling to floor or floor to ceiling. How would I describe it? Like a plant shelf. It's a pressure rod. So it puts pressure on the ceiling and on the floor, not to damage it, but just enough to keep the rod upright. And then it has little plant shelves on it. I'm sure you've seen it around before. So this sits on that facing my south window. So it's a very narrow window, like you'll see in the clip. So it doesn't get full blast of south facing sun every day, all throughout the day, I should say, but it gets, you know, sort of the afternoon time and a little bit like the peak of the day. So it gets about 4 to 5 hours of direct sunlight, and then it gets indirect sunlight after that, but still very bright sunlight. I have it in my own aeroid potting mix, which tends to include, this one actually includes a little bit of potting soil, lots of coconut husks, and lots of perlite. So that's what I tend to put in my own mix. And there's actually a little bit of sphagnum moss in there, because when I took it out of the spag and I put it into this, it's very, very hard to get sphagnum moss off of the roots. So I didn't want to go out the root system too much. So there's just a little bit of spag in there. And how do I know when to water it? I love to do the weighing test. With this plant, I've seen many people's pots of this, and I know people say do the taco tests with Hoya to see when they're drying out, but to me that's a little too late. And I noticed that with Hoya, when it's too late, this plant especially starts to wrinkle. Let's see, do I have any one of the wrinkly leaves? No, I don't have any to give an example, but they tend to get really wrinkly and shriveled. And with this plant, they don't seem to recover from that wrinkled look. So it's not the look that I'm going for. So I'm going to try to stay on top of the waterings a bit. And from what I see some people with big lush ones, but I also see that it can be tricky for some people. One minute it's happy and another minute it's not. So yes, but it's a comeback. It's made its way back into the land of the living. It looks really good. And I just thought I'd give you a glimpse of how I propagated it. So this is what I did. So I took like an old container. I know, not very pretty, but it gets the job done. I put a little saran wrap on it. I reuse this all the time, and I put it in some sphagnum moss down below. So these are for my mom actually, and she'll be really happy to see a close up of it. But yeah, this is the rest of the cuttings that's in here. So that's this one. I know I talked a lot for this plant, but I'm very proud of it, and because I thought I was going to lose it, and I'm just glad that I was able to save it and rescue it, and I'm looking forward to what it can do. Okay, so for the next plant in my collection, which one am I going to talk about next? Yes, the fastest grower. So the past couple months I've done this, it's been legitimately the fastest grower. But with this one, I think there have been other plants that maybe have been growing faster in my collection, but I haven't noticed. But the plant that I've been watching and I've been fascinated at the rate at which it's been growing, which is why I'm mentioning it, is this one. And this is a Scindapsus treubii moonlight. Yes, Scindapsus treubii moonlight. So yes, I know I have this macrame hanger here. I should have removed it ahead of time. Forgive me. So this hangs in my bathroom. And so that's why I actually made this, because these macrame hangers can get so expensive. Anyways, I just got some of the cord from Amazon. I'll link it down below, and I just made some myself. Anyways, so this plant, you may remember this plant from my January plant haul. So I got this plant at a local nursery. It was a bigger plant, and my mom and we went in, we bought it together, and then I split it up, and I gave her half and I took the other half. Let me tell you about this plant. This plant is so interesting. So it's actually the only Scindapsus that I have in my collection. And I actually don't like Scindapsus because I've tried it before. They always seem so fussy. I'm never really impressed by the foliage. I don't know. I don't know. I'm one of those rare people who I'm not fascinated by it at all. But anyways, this one for some reason really caught my attention. The silvery, I like silver. I love silver. The silver against the green, that contrast, I really enjoy it. So I always wanted to get one of these, and this was available at my local plant store. It was, I think, the only one left. And so we got it. Now they've got smaller pots of them selling for cheaper, but let's not talk about that. Let's not. Anyways, so I got this plant, and a lot of people warned me. A lot of really nice viewers was telling me about how this plant, it tends to be overwatered easily, quickly, be careful, etc. So I put it in a super chunky aeroid mix, and for some reason, I felt like it was growing very, very slowly. That, and I felt like the soil dried out really quickly. So I went back at it. I added a little, I made it a bit less fast draining by adding a bit more potting soil in it. And I also decided to put it in a self-watering pot. So that was risky because I've heard so many people talk about how this plant gets root rot very quickly. And even when I look at the leaves that it came with from my nursery, like take a look at these leaves. Like you have a lot of damaged leaves. So here shows signs of underwatering and then a little bit of overwatering as well. Definitely inconsistent watering. So I was scared. I was nervous. Anyways, if you have this plant and you're struggling with it, but you know you're giving it lots and lots of light, put it in a self-watering pot. So that's what I did. And I kid you not, this plant drinks so much water. It is shocking how quickly the water reservoir for this plant dries out. I have never seen a plant. I mean, I don't have that much experience with self-watering pots, but of all the plants that I have in self-watering pots, this dries out like twice as fast. I'm sorry, I'm struggling here. This dries out twice as fast as all of my other plants in self-watering setups. It is so shocking. So it tells me that this plant is a drinker. It's a thirsty plant. It really drinks a lot of water. Another thing I've noticed about this plant is that it can tolerate lower light. So it definitely can. These really dark leaves are, to me, at least mine, they're very good at tolerating low light. And it will not lose a lot of leaves. It won't get dramatic. A lot of plants will get dramatic if you change its light conditions. This one doesn't. At least mine doesn't. But if you give this plant high light, it is going to grow so well for you. It's going to grow way faster. And so I thought, you know what, let me pop this plant in my bathroom where I have a south and west facing window. And yes, it has been doing so much better. I mean, it wasn't struggling before, but it has been growing so much faster. And I'm very, very happy with the amount of growth that it's been giving off. These really huge, huge leaves. I'm so impressed. And initially the leaves are they're a light green color and quite glossy. And I have a feeling if I give it less light, the leaves might be a little bit darker. Don't quote me on this. This is my assumption. But anyways, initially they're this very light green color. And then when they harden off, they will harden off into like a darker green color. But I love this plant. I'm very excited. And I'm not someone who likes to get duplicates of plants, especially if they look very similar. I mean, I do have more than one ficus in my collection, and I do have more than one ficus tineki and more than one ficus burgundy. When I started my plant collection, I didn't feel the way I feel now. But with this plant, I definitely would get the dark form. So I've seen the dark form sprinkled around in plant stores and plant nurseries. I definitely would get it because I love this plant and it's so easy. At least it's so easy for me. And I really enjoy it. It's been growing so well. I'm so happy it pushed out this vine here. And again, circling back to why it's on this list and the fastest grower, it has so many growth points in there. Initially, it takes a while for them to sort of push themselves out, but after a while, it really does take off and just starts shooting out lots of new growth. And one more thing I'd like to add, this plant doesn't need high humidity. So you know how some plants, they just need high humidity to push out leaves and to grow well. I don't think it needs high humidity to grow well, but very similar to maybe a philodendron pink princess, or there are some plants that they don't need high humidity to grow well, but the new leaves tend to get stuck. This plant is very much so like that. The new leaves tend to get stuck and they get a lot of physical damage, like right here. Very easily they get a lot of physical damage. So that's one of the reasons why I've decided to put it in my bathroom. And I've noticed the higher humidity in my bathroom has helped the leaves to have less damage, to reduce the ripping and the tearing on it. I mean, you can still see a little bit in the back. So look at this leaf in the back. Can you see? I really hope you can see. But can you see in the back where there's a little, right here on this side, where there's a little bit of physical damage on the leaf? So this is where it was sort of, there was friction, it was trying to push out. So this happens a lot. So if you give it higher humidity, I definitely think this will help you to have more perfect leaves. But I don't think it needs the humidity in order to grow. But again, this is my first, my first and only Scindapsus that I've ever successfully grown in my collection. So don't quote me on this. But anyways, I'm just happy that this plant is growing well and how quickly it pushed out this vine when I put it into my south-facing window. I'm sorry. I'm really babbling this month. I'm really, really babbling, but I'm very happy with this one. How's the video going so far? Like what you see? If so, please let me know by hitting the like button down below. And you may want to consider subscribing. You'll be able to easily find and access my videos in the future. Okay, let's keep going. So the next plant that I'm going to talk about is the showstopper, or the show off. So in previous months, I've talked about my Alocasia Frydek variegated. And yes, that plant is still showing off and it's still doing its thing. It has actually been producing so many white leaves, or leaves with such very large bits of variegation, that I had to sort of put it a little bit away from my grow light. So now its newest leaf seems to have a little less variegation. So I'm happy about that, because we need the green. Like, the plant needs to eat. So yes, and also my Jose Buono. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know this, but yes, my Jose Buono is also doing very well still showing off. I would still say these two are still the showstoppers, or the top show off plants in my collection right now. But for the sake of variety and to just appreciate other plants, I thought I would mention something different. I'm mentioning my Philodendron White Wizard. So you may remember this setup. So in my community, on my community tab, I asked you all if I should merge these two plants together. So on this side, I have my Philodendron White Princess, and on this side, I have my Philodendron White Wizard. They look very similar, and I was wondering if I should put them together. Most of you said to keep them separate. So I sort of decided to do both. So they're both in this self-watering pot here, but they're still in their individual nursery pots. What I did is I took the wick in the self-watering pot. Of course, I laced it through as usual. And instead of putting the two wicks into one pot, I put one wick in each pot. And since I've done that, both plants have exploded. Wow, they've been growing so well. I've noticed that I wasn't able to keep on top of the watering. I noticed that I was guessing a lot when it came to the watering of these plants. So that's why I decided to put it in a self-watering setup. And I only had one self-watering planter left. And this planter is too big for the one plant. And, I decided to keep the two plants separate instead of putting them all in one potting medium. Anyways, the whole purpose of me talking about all of this is to talk about my Philodendron White Wizard. So here, and by the time this video goes up, you would see a clip of this on my Instagram. It's put out this beautiful new leaf, and it's got very high amounts of variegation. I just love the way these leaves always look so tastefully done. They look painted. They look very well designed. I really appreciate the foliage and the variegation on the White Wizard. And I just love the light green, the dark green, and then the splashes, or the little bits of white variegation on it. I really enjoy it. And one thing I like about the White Princess and the White Wizard, at least for mine so far, maybe I give it high amounts of humidity, I don't know, but you don't get a lot of melting of the white variegation. I guess it doesn't have that much white variegation. So I like that it doesn't melt. But for example, so for this white wizard, white princess hair, this is an older leaf, but that's to show you like this, I've had this leaf for a very long time. Yes, it's starting to expire, but you notice how there's no melting away of the variegation, just a little bit of a stress hair because of changing it, moving it around in different places. But yes, overall, I love this new leaf on this white wizard, and I just wanted to call it out, and I just wanted to mention it because this plant it grows slowly, so it's a very slow grower for me, and I have a strong feeling again it's because I was underwatering it and I wasn't giving it enough light. So now it lives very close to my south facing window, and I made sure to make sure it's getting a lot of light because it's in a self-watering pot. So I need the plant to quickly use up the water, and I don't want it sitting in water because I don't want to cause root rot. And I've noticed a very much increased rate of growing. And yeah, you may say, what, just one leaf? Like, wow, that's not that fast. Well, that's why it's not on the fastest grower part of of this list. But I'm very proud of this leaf that is given me, and it didn't just give me a plain green leaf. And I'm also glad and happy that there's not a lot of physical damage on the leaf, because a lot of times the leaves can come out, with some physical damage. Again, this is a plant that I think would appreciate higher amounts of humidity just to reduce the amount of physical damage as the leaf is emerging. And that's why I'm so happy that this leaf looks the way it does, and it looks very pretty. Anyways, I just wanted to shed some love, give some love to this plant, and I'm very, very proud of this new leaf because it is a bit of a slow grower, and with variegated plants, you just never know. Because, for example, this white princess has been giving me so many green leaves, and so I chopped it back. Let's see if you can see right here. I chopped it back to where its last highly variegated leaf was, which I showed you earlier, and now it started to put out some new growth. So we'll see if it's going to be variegated. So hence why I'm very grateful that this white wizard has variegation, because this plant, this one here, the white princess, has lots of light and it's still giving not that much variegation. So yep. So anyways, the Philodendron white wizard. Last but not least is the MVP. And this plant, I still haven't learned how to pronounce its name well, so please forgive me. And it is the Hoya. And it is the Hoya Coriacea or Coriacea silver. So if you saw my Hoya haul video that I posted last month, this was one of the new plants that I acquired for the month of February. And I was so excited to get this plant. Yes, I know the setup. We'll talk about that soon. But I was so excited to get this plant. This was actually the most I have ever spent on, actually no, not the most I've ever spent on a plant, but this is the most I've ever spent on a Hoya. So I was very excited to get it, and I was worried because I didn't know much about this Hoya and I didn't know how to care for it. And so for a very long time, it only had a little nub, just this little nub here. And I'll show you a clip of what it looked like from the last video. And I was so worried that I just couldn't figure out how to get this plant to grow. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. It wasn't declining, but it just wasn't growing. It wasn't doing anything. So anyways, I took the plant, I put it into Pon. I put it into semi-hydro. So there's Pon at the bottom, and then I just put some leca balls at the top. And I put water. All the plant needed was to be watered. I don't know why I didn't think of that. I was just so scared of overwatering this plant that I just gave it sips and sips and sips of water. But then when I put it into Pon and I put it with a little bit of a reservoir at the bottom, the plant just took off. So definitely, I would say this is one of your thirstier Hoyas. So this one definitely likes to more more moisture. It definitely likes to have water around it, and it has these stunning leaves with a very light green, a minty green color with a little bit of dark green on there. And the dark green is technically like a splash on it. It's so stunning. And what shocks me about this plant is how quickly it grows. So from the time you saw this video, which was the haul video, which was the end of April, the end of February, which was the end of February, to now, it has produced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves. So really, it's one of the fastest growers in my collection right now. And it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of the show off with the leaves and a very fast grower, and definitely a comeback, because I was so worried I was going to lose this plant. I felt so dumb to have spent so much and to have lost this plant. So yes, every day I am staring at it. I am excited to have it. And yes, I know I don't have the most beautiful setup for it, but I don't mind. I like it in this little cup here and this little pot. I got this from Sobeys for $1. It just helps to keep the pot stable, and it lives in my south facing window right on the same shelf that my Lacunosa my Lacunosa Super Silva lives on. So they live on that same shelf. And definitely this is a thirstier plant. It loves to lean and reach for the light. So it definitely, you know how some plants are like that? Every single day you could see it moving, not literally see the plant moving, but in the morning it's facing one way, and then by the end of the day it's facing another way. This plant is definitely one of these plants where it tends to reach and lean for the light quite a bit. And I mean, it's in a south facing window. There is no shortage of light, but it just loves soaking up lots of light. I wouldn't say that this plant needs high amounts of humidity, but I have noticed like a little bit of browning on the tips of this plant. So of this leaf here, I should say. We'll see with the newer leaves how they look. There's no browning on the tips of the newer leaves, but it appears that one of the leaves, like this leaf, it does seem to be not as evenly formed as your average leaves. If you could see, it looks a bit, deformed a little bit right here. So I'm not sure if it's because of humidity. Maybe when it was a smaller leaf, the room was too dry, and so some of the edges of the baby leaf sort of broke off, like it got dry and broke off. I'm not sure, but I think this plant may enjoy higher humidity. I would say that. So I love this plant, and I'm very excited for these newer leaves here. I'm excited to see how they look. I'm excited to see the shape, because so far, none of the leaves look exactly the same. So like this leaf looks a bit different from this one because it doesn't have this pointier tip here, but then this one is a bit differently shaped. And then this one doesn't have the pointy tip at the bottom. Again, is it humidity? I have no idea. And then these new ones seem to have an extremely pointy tip. So I don't know, but I'm excited. And I thought, last but not least, I thought this plant was going to be sun stressed. It was getting a lot of direct sunlight, but no, this leaf is not sun stressed at all. This leaf here used to look, can you see like the dark green on this leaf? So the bigger leaf used to look like this, but then when it hardened off or got a little bit bigger, I believe this is still hardening off and it's still going to get bigger. It definitely looked a lot lighter. So I don't know. Again, I don't have a whole lot of experience with this plant, but I'm very excited, and I'm excited to see how it's growing for me. I haven't seen it in that many people's collections, so I'm pretty sure if I went digging online, and I will insert some clips here, I could find more mature versions. But oddly enough, I haven't done that with this plant. Go online and look up a bunch of mature versions. I just have fun looking at mine. So yeah. So that's this one, the Hoya Coriacea, Hoya Coriacea. And that's it. These are my favorite plants for the month of March. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I appreciate you spending some of your day with me. And I would love to know, what are your favorite plants for the month of March? What are your fastest growers, your comebacks, your showstoppers, your show-offs? And what's your MVP? Which one is your favorite for the month? Thank you again for watching. You can find me on Instagram, where you will see little clips. You'll get more updated information as to what's happening with me and my plants. And that's it for today. Thank you again for watching. See you next time.